A cosmic body exploded over Siberia with the force of a nuclear weapon. More than 2,000 square kilometers of forest were torn apart. Around 80 million trees fell. Yet when scientists finally reached the devastated landscape, they could not find the one piece of evidence everyone expected. There was no crater. The ground seemed almost unwilling to admit that anything had happened. The destruction was undeniable. The impact site was missing. That contradiction became one of the greatest scientific investigations of the 20th century. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, the Siberian wilderness appeared ordinary. Vast forests stretched across the landscape with almost no permanent settlements. Then the sky changed. A brilliant blue-white object crossed overhead. Moments later, an explosion shook the region with extraordinary force. Far from the center of the blast, people described an experience that felt impossible to understand. At the trading post of Vanavara, roughly 65 kilometers away, one witness, S. Semenov, later recalled being thrown from his porch. Before the shockwave reached him, he felt an intense burst of heat so sudden that he believed his clothes were burning. Then came the concussion. Windows shattered, buildings shook, fences collapsed. Others compared the sounds to relentless artillery or powerful thunder rolling across a clear sky. Everything seemed to arrive from above. The reports agreed on the violence. They agreed on the blinding light. They agreed on the overwhelming force. But none of them described the earth opening beneath their feet. If an object large enough to flatten an entire forest had struck the ground, the impact should have left an enormous scar. That expectation remained unquestioned. The crater simply had not been found yet. Nearly 20 years later, Soviet mineralogist Leonid Kulik led the first major scientific expedition into the remote region. Reaching the site was an expedition in itself. The forests were difficult to cross, the wetlands slowed every movement, and the area had remained largely untouched since the explosion. Kulik expected to discover the impact point. Instead, he found something far stranger. For kilometers in every direction, trees lay scattered across the landscape. Not randomly. They all pointed away from a common center. The farther the expedition surveyed, the clearer the pattern became. Millions of trunks had fallen outward, as though an immense invisible hand had swept across the forest. The devastation was beyond question. The crater was still missing. Kulik searched swampy depressions, believing one of them might conceal the buried remains of an iron meteorite. Excavations followed. Measurements continued. More expeditions returned. Nothing. The longer the search continued, the harder the absence became to ignore. Perhaps the investigators had simply chosen the wrong location. Perhaps the true impact site remained hidden somewhere beyond the mapped forest. That explanation became increasingly difficult to defend. The forest itself had begun telling a different story. At the center of the destruction, researchers encountered one of the most unsettling sights of the entire investigation. The trees there had not fallen. They were still standing. Their branches had been stripped away. Their bark had been scorched. They resembled rows of bare utility poles rising from the ground. Everywhere else, the forest lay flattened. Directly beneath the center, the trunks remained upright. The missing crater returned once again. Not as an unanswered question, as an even greater contradiction. If the object had struck the ground, why did the center not contain a massive hole surrounded by fallen debris? Why did the trees nearest the center remain standing, while those farther away had been knocked flat? The landscape had preserved something more valuable than an impact scar. It had preserved geometry. The fallen trees formed a giant directional record of the blast itself. Across an area nearly the size of Rhode Island, every trunk became an arrow pointing away from the same invisible source. The standing trees marked that source from directly below. Without realizing it, investigators had been reading the wrong surface. They had searched the ground for evidence that had been written into the forest. Decades later, modern researchers approached the mystery differently. Instead of asking where the object struck, they asked whether it had struck the ground at all. Advanced computer simulations reconstructed what would happen if a rocky cosmic body entered Earth's atmosphere at tremendous speed. The calculations produced a surprising result. Long before reaching the surface, enormous aerodynamic pressure could tear the object apart. Its tremendous kinetic energy would not disappear. It would be released into the atmosphere. Several kilometers above the forest, the disintegrating body would explode into an expanding fireball and an immense downward-moving blast. Suddenly, the evidence aligned. The outward pressure wave explained the radial pattern of fallen trees. The intense downward force explained the standing trunks beneath the center. And the missing crater required no special explanation at all. There had never been a ground impact capable of producing one. The atmosphere itself had become the site of the explosion. The object transferred nearly all of its destructive energy into the air instead of into the Earth's crust. The forest had recorded that invisible event with remarkable precision. One uncertainty remains. Scientists continue to debate exactly what kind of cosmic body entered the atmosphere that morning. Modern evidence tends to favor a dense, stony asteroid, while some earlier interpretations suggested a cometary fragment. Because the object disintegrated almost completely, its original composition cannot be confirmed with absolute certainty. That uncertainty survives. The missing crater does not. Today, visitors to the Tunguska region still find no vast impact scar carved into the landscape. The forest has largely returned. The ground remains unbroken. The object that first appeared as missing evidence has become the strongest piece of evidence in the entire investigation. At the beginning, the empty ground seemed to represent failure. Scientists searched for decades, expecting that one more expedition might finally uncover the hidden impact site. Instead, the absence itself solved the case. The crater was never overlooked. It was never buried. It was never waiting to be discovered. Its absence revealed that one of the most powerful explosions in recorded history had happened not on the Earth, but above it. The silent forest never contained the wound everyone expected. It contained something far more revealing. It contained the shape of an invisible explosion.